and welcome to our case study presentation. Our presentation is called Kept in Translation, or alternative title, Assorted Nuts, wherein we combine signals with Environics Analytics data to both improve audience definition as well as seek out opportunities for activation. I'm Sean Dixon. I am the Managing Director of Marketing Science at Omnicom Media Group Canada.
And I'm Peter Venus. I lead Marketing Science at OMD Canada.
So for many who aren't familiar with what OMG Canada is, or what OMD Canada is, OMG Canada is one of the, OMG is one of the world's largest media investment and buying groups. In Canada, we represent 4 major brands and a couple of smaller ones, OMD, Hearts and Science, PhD, and Touche. And within each of those brands, we represent many of Canada's top advertisers, as well as operate as part of the global network for some of the top global brands in a variety of functions. We operate both as a media investment company, as well as kind of a media consultancy service, where we take advantage of all the data and technology that's available in the industry, pick the best of it, and provide our clients advice and consultation on how to best apply it. So we are subject to industry challenges the same way that marketers are subject to industry challenges. Consumers are a big driver of industry challenges. And there's an awful lot to talk about there. But one of the biggest ones, and one of the ones that Environics Analytics really helps us drive solutions to, is the challenges around consumer data. Data as a whole, regardless of where it comes from, usually has some implication or source from a consumer standpoint. So when we think about, well, how do we use data responsibly? How do we use data in a way that is, considerate of, what's the right thing to do and what's the perception that a consumer will have if they were aware that we're using that data? It's always something that's forefront in our minds. So broadly, I mean, there's huge opportunity as well as challenge with this whole topic. There is nonstop innovation technology that comes out. Different platforms are introducing fantastic new capabilities, and figuring out, what is the best way to make use of those technologies in a safe way is absolutely something that both excites and kind of scares us a little bit, in that we absolutely don't want to miss out on our opportunity to deliver a fantastic campaign for our clients, but we want to make sure that the technology that we're using is safe. Legislation is a big one. Obviously, we never want to do anything that is against any existing legislation, whether it's privacy or anything else, but making sure that we are on board, both with a following the rules, as well as helping to communicate the challenges that we face as an industry, and participating in the conversations through a variety of industry bodies to make sure that the role that we play in marketing is considered when legislation is drafted. And finally, I mean, consumer privacy. There is, privacy is covered by the legislation, but there's also, what consumers see as private and what consumers feel is appropriate use of their own data. Every action that we take, every targeting decision, every data analysis that we do, absolutely tries to be as respectful as possible, and is respectful as possible, of a client's personal information. Wherever possible, we don't even handle clients' personal information, but we always, consider both what the client's experience is, what our clients' rules and responsibilities are around that data, as well as, again, observing any existing legislation or rules that exist around what we do or how we might use any of that data. So one of the ways that we can do that in a structured and disciplined way is through our Omni platform. And Omni is Omnicom's kind of proprietary marketing operating system. It really is a huge development in the way that we service our clients, in that we've always had this challenge of interpreting or translating a business objective or a challenge or a media opportunity from one stage of a plan to execution or to attribution or to something else. Omni is a platform that allows us to take a variety of different applications or processes and tie them together, both through a back-end system, as well as through being something that is accommodating of any existing technologies that perhaps our clients or our partners in the media landscape might have on offer. So it really is transformative in the way that our teams are working together, provides them a really strong framework in the way that they take, they tackle the challenges that our clients present to us. And it's really focused on, again, going back to what a consumer perception, how we respect consumers' data. It absolutely is above board in the way that we are trying to connect a variety of different data sets to maximize just how true the line is between a data input and an activation output. That we minimize anything around, well, this data source says things this way, we think that means this and this other data source, and we try and make best fits when we're trying to kind of arbitrarily join different data sets. So, I've kind of spoken to it, but sorry, Peter. Right. The really exciting thing about how Omni works is the ability to leverage that same data across all of the different application suites. They're not all tied to audience building, but we have media forecasting tools, media and consumer insight tools that are all built into it. But keeping that truth from one end to the other means that we do deliver a more accurate picture of consumers and a better connection with brands, because we can really make use of all the different things that pop up in every single data set, rather than having to discard them when we can't find an ideal match between data sets. Right. So Environics as a data source is Environics Analytics as a data source is, represents a huge opportunity. While it isn't consumer level or identity level, we think that fits exactly where we want to be when we don't want to be over targeting or over filtering against a particular audience. So when we take a data set using Environics Analytics data as a suggestion, or as an example, we start with a data signal, so that we might get this from business data, we might get this from media data, some actions on a website, which one of the examples we're going to go through in a moment, or even just broad category data. We get a signal about, well, here is an attribute or a location or something like that that we see as important. We take that from a data set, in this case Environics Analytics, and find opportunities to connect it with other data sets to enrich what that consumer profile or target audience might look like. So we can do exploratory data analysis with a CRM data set. We can carve up other data sets in different ways to try and understand, well, where's the opportunity here? How do we build something with scale? And how do we generate meaningful insight that we can develop strategy against? From there, I mean, it's fantastic, and often, everybody has access to a variety of fantastic data sets. There's always this gap where, well, how do we actually turn this into something that we can do something with? And we think that we've come up with a really, really great way of actually taking action on a lot of that insight. So our ability to combine with additional data sources, combined with ideal opportunities around activation and inventory, that's where we come in and do the remixing of it. And then finally, that activation, so that we know that we're building an activatable audience. We can point to parts in that audience that map all the way back to our initial data inputs, without there having to be some translation at some point to say, well, we know we want to talk to people who are interested in buying organic food products, and this is the best audience that's made available to us via some third party. We're able to actually develop and generate that audience and activate it directly, which is a really, really exciting development for us. So Peter's going to take you through our case study where we took some of these actions to get a better insight and understanding around what that means for our Subaru client.
What I do want to impress on you as we go through this is that it's really about the learning opportunities. And I'll get to that, and you'll see why that is important. To start, what we're looking at for Subaru as a business challenge is the idea of trying to grow the business against an aging population. And I think that's not a challenge that's necessarily unique, but as their customer base was starting to flatten out, they needed to find ways to identify new consumers to bring into their fold. And yes, there has been segmentation that was done in the past based off of their sales. The interesting thing is, as time goes on, what started to happen and was this sort of homogeneity that's starting to appear across their different segments, that there was a lot more overlap across their vehicles and who was buying their different nameplates than there were any differences. So we had to find a way to make them distinct. So if sales as a segmentation point was showing this large overlap, what could we do to tease out differences? And one way that we thought of was to look kind of further up that consumer journey? Were there things that we as a media agency could uniquely look at to identify how people were engaging, but not necessarily on the sales end? Because it was turning out that everyone who was buying was generally the same. So are they more different when they're visiting the site? Or are they more different when they're interacting with our ads? So we took those signals and we used Environics Analytics data to tease out different profiles of people that were converting, people that were engaging with ads. And what we ultimately came out with were different opportunities of FSAs to target against. At the same time, we did confirm some of those similarities, that we can't deny that there is some overlap that's going to occur, because as a brand, there's a certain draw of a type of people that is drawn to the brand. But at the same time, we did define new attributes that were at the brand level sometimes surprising. But more importantly, we were able to distinguish the different nameplates by these different attributes. And from an activation standpoint, this is where Sean was talking about that idea of high fidelity, of minimizing the loss in translation between who the audience is at the start from the analysis and drawing out those attributes. As we push it through our systems within Omni, what we're trying to do is make sure that the same people that we were talking about at the input stage is coming out as an output and ultimately in activation. And now I know that you see these red numbers, and I know that as you look at these numbers, they don't look that great. But this is where it's important to start thinking about what is the learning opportunity. I think the challenge that we run into when we do this type of analysis, or we go activate into the market, is that there's this constant expectation and pressure that everything has to be better right out of the gates. So let's start by managing those expectations. Really, when we derive these segments, the first thing that we want to answer is, do they react differently? Because no matter what we do in the sort of lab environments that we have to analyze and to segment and to crunch the data, when we actually go out into market, that's really the thing that's going to tell us what is going to happen. That is the thing that will validate what some of our assumptions. That we really need to adopt this idea of rapid prototyping and making sure that we take the steps to get to better outcomes, but to also manage the expectations that the first step isn't necessarily going to yield you the best results that you're looking for. But it did direct us to understand that there are other things that we need to test out. So for example, if you have two audiences that don't react differently to that same creative, then you really have to reconsider how you're defining those audiences. So that what you can start to iterate are the creative messages or iterations that you might want to put in front of these audiences. But at the same time, given more time, you can start to understand how you can tweak these different audiences to either make them more distinct, or to get a better understanding of what sort of message might they react better towards. So really, it's not that just because we did segmentation, everything's going to work. It's that because we have done segmentation, we have taken the first steps to better performance. So what should you leave with today? The first thing is to understand that flexibility is essential. That sometimes the ideal state of using sales as an analytics point may not yield the most informative things. That you do have to take a step back sometimes and have an understanding of what that journey might look like, or what other signals are available to you that you can use as those pivot points to do these analysis and segmentation. Secondly, you really need to keep an eye on activation. I think no matter how good or how much information you have, if you can't actually action on it, if you can't actually use that to activate, I guess, in the media space, then we really have to consider the value of it. So making sure that we can actually push these things out into market is really critical. We also have to keep in mind that we don't want to overfilter, that the most granular segmentation can lead you to just putting your ads in front of one person. And really, that's not as economical as we would like. But as a final thought, what we aim to do is minimize that translation and interpretation. We want to make sure that the outputs of all of our analysis can be directly activated against as much as we can. And that minimizing loss in fidelity is really what makes the tests and the insights that we put out into market that much more valuable. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what we've had to say, and we'll take this moment now to address any of your questions.